Just after signing a big deal, Emily was discussing with her department where to go for dinner after work when the receptionist called.
Emily, can you come down for a moment? There's a couple downstairs claiming to be your parents. I told them you were working and couldn't come out, but they insisted on coming in.
Emily had always told everyone at the company that her parents had passed away, and she had almost come to believe it herself. For a moment, she couldn't even recall what they looked like. When she saw them, with their gray hair and wrinkled faces, she was momentarily taken aback.
See, I told you Emily is my daughter, but you didn't believe me.
The receptionist looked at Emily awkwardly. Emily gave her a reassuring look and took her parents to the cafe downstairs.
Go ahead, what do you want?
After not seeing each other for 10 years, their sudden appearance couldn't be for anything good. However, they saved her the trouble of flaunting her success later on.
Emily, your brother is getting married. As his sister, you should buy him a house.
The two exchanged a glance, and her stepmother spoke first. Seeing that Emily didn't respond, her father started to play the emotional card.
Yes, Emily, it wasn't easy raising you. We spent a lot of money. Even if you don't want to spend money on your brother, you should at least show some gratitude to us.
Seeing their sense of entitlement, Emily couldn't help but laugh and changed the subject.
Dad, I remember when I was preparing for the college entrance exam, you wanted to buy a house in the county. Why didn't you buy it in the end?
Wasn't it because your dad was unable to make enough money? How could we buy a house without money?
Oh, I remember now, you even planned to marry me off to a man from the neighboring village.
The veil of the past was easily lifted by Emily, leaving only disbelief in her stepmother and father's eyes, as if shocked that she knew about this.
No money to buy a house, so you sell your son instead. You wouldn't think your son is worthless and can't fetch a good price, would you?
Emily,
He shouted in anger, slamming the table and calling her name. The cup on the table rippled, trembling incessantly, just like Emily used to cower in the corner, waiting for his scolding.
I didn't raise you to be so ungrateful. Can't you stop being so selfish? Look around the village. Who else is as unfilial as you? Hurry up and buy a house for your brother. You make so much money, and if you're not filial, you'll face consequences.
Emily's father's yelling was just like before, but today, she wasn't afraid at all. He just seemed like a trapped beast to her.
I've never seen anyone in the village sell their own daughter for money. If anyone deserves consequences, it's you.
The atmosphere was tense. Her stepmother tried to play the good cop.
Emily, don't argue with your dad. Who told you we wanted to sell you? It was just a joke. You know how your uncles and aunts like to tease you.
She finished smiling at Emily, then turned to scold her father.
Emily has always taken things seriously since she was a child. She believes everything and now she's upset with us.
Her father was still furious, glaring at her.
I raised you, and if I really wanted to sell you, I would have done it long ago, not waited until your senior year. Who told you this?
You told me yourself.
She said, seeing the disbelief on their faces, though their expressions showed doubt, wondering if they had indeed said it.
Give up. I won't give you a penny.
As she was leaving, her stepmother finally dropped her pretense and shouted.
If you don't buy a house for your brother, I'll make your life miserable. I'll come to bother you every day and see how long you can stand.
The next day, just as Emily stepped into the company, her father arrived downstairs, causing a scene.
Emily, it's only right to pay back what you owe.
His wife, Emily's stepmother, was crying beside him.
Emily stole $300,000 from us. That's our hard-earned money from half a lifetime of work. Emily, have you no shame? You earn so much money working outside, yet you still take from us. There will be consequences for this.
Emily looked at them with a mocking gaze. When she fled from home, she only had 5 yuan in her pocket, saved from skipping 2 lunches.
Is this fun for you?
Her calm demeanor seemed to startle them a bit.
Your son isn't my responsibility. How dare you ask me to buy him a house? Are you really that poor without me at home?
Seeing a few onlookers gathering around, her father felt humiliated and raised his hand to hit her.
Don't hit the child!
But she didn't actually stop him, letting his slap land on Emily's face. Emily didn't dodge and took the slap head-on. The metallic taste of blood spread in her mouth, but she still looked at him coldly.
Still not satisfied, huh? You little brat? Do you have a death wish?
Feeling his pride swell, he aimed for another slap. Emily kicked his knee, causing him to lose balance and kneel before her, his eyes filled with rage.
I'll provide for your old age, but buying a house? That's not happening.
Her stepmother helped him up.
You little brat!
He was still fuming and wanted to hit her again.
I've called the police. If you hit me again, you'll be detained for causing trouble.
He stopped, seemingly weighing the truth of her words. Just then, the police arrived.
Who called the police?
I did. These two are causing a disturbance outside our company, severely affecting our public image, and they're slandering and insulting me, damaging my personal reputation.
She's lying, officer. This is our daughter. She.
I'm not lying. There's surveillance here. We can check what they've done. And my face.
She gently touched the swollen side of her face.
This is also their doing. They came up and hit me without saying a word. In broad daylight, who do they think they are?
She exaggerated her pain, and the officer nodded.
Where can we check the surveillance?
The security room, over there.
She pointed in a direction, ready to lead the officer and her parents over. They hesitated.
No, it's too hot. I'm feeling a bit faint. Let's check it tomorrow.
Yes, officer, it's too hot. I'll take my wife to the hospital for some medicine. We'll check it next time.
He then turned to Emily, winking.
Emily, talk to them. This is a family matter. There's no need to involve the police.
It's just a few steps away. Let's resolve this today to avoid future trouble and not inconvenience the officer again in this heat.
Seeing they still wouldn't move, she added.
You don't look like you're fainting. It's not even noon yet. Let's go. After we resolve this, I'll buy you some medicine.
After a few minutes of standoff, her father relented.
Officer, I did slap her, but it's because she's unfilial. As parents, we only want the best for our children. You understand, right?
The officer seemed a bit exasperated. Seeing Emily wasn't insisting on checking the surveillance, he softened his tone.
Go on.
My daughter is unfilial. We raised her with great effort, gave her food, clothes, and education. But now that she's earning money outside, she looks down on us and doesn't even come home. She doesn't want to support us in our old age. Officer, don't you think she deserves a slap?
The officer looked at Emily.
Is this true?
It's true.
The officer's expression became a bit complicated. He glanced at her parents, but before he could say anything, Emily continued.
But it's not the whole truth.
She explained.
They gave me food, but only what my brother left over, never enough to fill me. They gave me clothes, but they were all hand-me-downs they picked up. They let me go to school, but didn't pay for my tuition. I had to work during the summer to earn it. Why would I want to return to such a family and make myself miserable?
Emily, stop talking nonsense.
He then turned to the officer with a smile.
She's just a child, doesn't know any better, just talking nonsense.
I'm 28 now, Dad. Do you still think I'm as gullible as before?
Emily sneered and told the officer the truth.
They came to find me this time not because they missed me, but because my brother is getting married and needs a house. They don't have the money, so they came to ask me for it. Officer, this money shouldn't be my responsibility, right?
It shouldn't be.
The officer was interrupted by her father, influenced by her mention of old age support.
Who said you should buy a house for your brother? Emily, if you don't want to come back to our home, give us $300,000 now, and we won't need you to support us in the future. Just consider it as if we never had you as a daughter.
Her father's unreasonable demand made the officer look at Emily with difficulty. He wanted to mediate, but Emily spoke directly.
I only have 200,000. If you don't agree, we'll just drag this out. If you agree, don't come to me for anything in the future. The officer is here, we can write an agreement, sign it, and sever our father-daughter relationship.
She took out the pre-written severance agreement and threw it in front of them. Though they were a bit stunned, they quickly signed it. After giving her their bank account number, they were about to leave, but Emily stopped them.
Don't go. We've settled the money issue, but what about the slap you gave me?
Her father looked displeased but was held back by her stepmother. She threw 200 yuan on the ground without handing it to Emily.
Is this enough? Don't bother us anymore. You didn't catch it, so don't blame me.
Who's bothering whom? Emily wanted to roll her eyes at her, but with the officer still there, she bent down to pick up the money and smiled at her.
Thank you.
Before leaving, her father seemed to be thinking about something. He raised his hand to pat her shoulder, but she instinctively dodged. His hand hung awkwardly. If I hadn't lived through this once before, I might have easily handed them the money. But if I hadn't experienced this rebirth, what awaited me was an unimaginable nightmare. 10 years ago, I opened my eyes the night before the college entrance exam. A sudden, inexplicable fragrance filled my nostrils, a scent that felt like freedom to someone who had spent 10 years in confinement. Instead of the soft, mushy mud beneath my hands, I felt the solid, sturdy texture of wood.
What is this place? How did I get here?
I opened my eyes and found myself working on problems in the living room. For a moment, I couldn't grasp what had happened. Could it be that everything I had experienced over the past 10 years was just a dream during a study break? But when I closed my eyes, I could still smell the stench of rotting mud around me. It wasn't until dinner that my stepmother, unusually, placed a chicken drumstick in my bowl and smiled warmly at me.
Emily, you're grown up now. It's time for you to get married.
A chill ran down my spine, and I felt as if I had plunged into an icy abyss. Those words had ruined my life.
No, Mom, I'm still in school.
What's wrong with that? Many in our village get married at your age. It's just a meeting. If you don't like him, you can always find someone else.
I didn't respond, continuing to eat. My stepmother wasn't asking, even if I objected, it wouldn't matter. I might even get a beating. The last time she wanted to buy a house in town but didn't have enough money, she turned to me.
Maybe she just wants me to meet someone.
She hadn't done anything too outrageous before. Though neighbors had mentioned my mother wanted me to go on a blind date, I believed that as my father's biological daughter, he wouldn't really trade me for money, even if he disliked me. So, when I was sold off, I had no guard up. The man who bought me was John, a widower from the neighboring village. He was cautious, fearing I would run back home, so he locked me in a pigsty.
Please, let me go to school or work. I promise to give you all my earnings.
But he wasn't. He feared I would escape and kept me chained in the pigsty with a chain as thick as an arm. John worked away from home and only returned during the new year to see if I was fit for marriage. His parents brought me food once a day, sometimes forgetting, leaving me to starve. The first year he returned, he was shocked by my sunken eyes and even more emaciated body.
I'm always hungry, it's unbearable.
John cursed me as worthless, but after that, I got 2 meals a day. I survived in that dark, foul pigsty for 10 years, eating every grain of rice his parents brought, stuffing it into my stomach with all my might.
If I could get out alive, I would seek revenge on everyone who had condemned me to this hell.
When I found out I was expecting, John uncharacteristically brought me out. The intense sunlight hurt my eyes, and I looked at my almost atrophied muscles, feeling utter despair. That year, John didn't go away for work and took care of me at home.
My appearance. I look like a ghost.
Emaciated limbs, a pale body, and a belly so large it seemed ready to burst, covered in blue veins.
Once you have the baby, I'll let you out, and we can live peacefully together.
The first child was a girl, and John was displeased. He tried for a long time, and I conceived again.
This time, I'll definitely let you out. I'll go wherever you want.
I never got the chance. John said it was my second time, so I had experience and could deliver at home. I struggled for a day, and when he finally decided to take me to the hospital, it was too late. My life ended in that stifling summer. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the night that would decide my fate. Given this second chance, I was determined not to end up in such a pitiful state again. John often tried to strike up conversations with me, frequently mentioning my parents.
Hey, how's your dad doing these days? Must be living the good life, right?
3 years ago, my father was indeed living a prosperous life. He bought a house in a small town, and my brother, who was about to start middle school, was conveniently placed in the best school in the county.
We're doing great. The business is running smoothly, and we have a bit of surplus too.
The family of 3 lived harmoniously. But later, things took a turn.
I didn't get into high school, Dad. I think I'll try a vocational school. As long as you take your studies seriously, son.
However, my brother didn't take his studies seriously and stayed at home for a few years before suddenly wanting to start his own business.
Dad, I want to start my own business. Can you lend me some money? We don't have the money for that right now, son.
Fortunately, my father didn't agree. When my stepmother was diagnosed with an illness, there was still money for her surgery. However, the reborn me didn't want them to have it so easy. Half a year ago, I added my brother on WeChat, pretending to be a man from City A, and started chatting with him.
Hey, who are you? How did you find me?
To gain his trust, I transferred him 50 to 60,000 yuan over time and sent him many specialties and expensive wines from City A. 2 months ago, I told him I was transferred to work in City B, and my superior was a young woman. One night, I went to a bar to drown my sorrows and messaged him, complaining about the unfair world, the fickle nature of people, and how a woman couldn't possibly do this job well.
Is she really good looking? How did she get the position?
She is quite good looking. I'll send you a photo tomorrow. But listen, bro, I could do this business on my own. How about this? You're not working right now, right? Come join me. We'll split it 70-30. Don't underestimate that 30. It's at least 5 figures.
Really? But I'm not sure.
Bro, I'm not treating you as an outsider. You just need to. I revealed the money-making method to him.
He was still hesitant, saying he needed to think about it. But the next day, I had a colleague take a photo of me, including the name tag.
Here's the photo I promised.
Is the name Emily, bro? She looks really familiar.
We're from the same city. Maybe you've seen her before. No big deal.
The screen showed multiple instances of typing. Before he finally sent.
Maybe I've seen her, huh?
I knew my brother's personality well. He was a pushover in front of others, but very aggressive with me. He couldn't stand me being better than him in any way. Even if I scored higher on a test, he would tear up my papers and homework. If I read a book at home, he would snatch it and burn it with a lighter. My stepmother didn't stop him, and my father would only tell me to give in to my brother. Having been oppressed for so many years, now seeing me successful and glamorous, he would probably be furious. Sure enough, he soon started following the method taught by his big brother. Being so greedy, he wouldn't be satisfied with a 70-30 split. A few days before my parents came to find me, he was still messaging me.
Bro, I'm not lying. Your superior is my sister. She left home a few years ago. Can you give me your company's address? After all, she's my sister, and we need to find her.
Is it really such a coincidence? I gave him the address and added, but your sister is quite attractive. If she marries me, we'll be even closer.
I had already found out that because my father didn't give him money, he took out a high-interest loan to start his business. Unable to repay it, he asked me for money. When I refused, he cursed me out.
You went solo without telling me. You don't understand the market, so losing money is normal. But I see you don't consider me a brother. Let's not contact each other anymore. Then I deleted him.
So my parents had to swallow their pride and come to me for money. Judging by the timing, my stepmother's illness should be diagnosed soon. As expected, the high-interest loans ballooned rapidly, leaving Emily's family with no choice but to scramble for repayment. Emily's stepmother didn't even have time for a checkup at the hospital. The 200,000 yuan they had wasn't enough, prompting her father to seek her out again. This time, he wasn't as arrogant. He and Emily's stepmother waited quietly downstairs at her office until she finished work. When Emily walked out, she pretended not to see them, but her father stopped her.
Dad, Mom, what brings you here? Is David getting married and you're here to give me the invitation?
Emily, your brother's business failed, and he owes money. Could you possibly give us another 100,000 yuan?
Seeing him at his age, Emily couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. But she knew her brother was likely enjoying himself somewhere unknown.
We've already severed ties. Your family's issues have nothing to do with me. If your son needs money, let him come to me himself. Maybe if I see him in a pitiful state, I'll give him the money.
Emily, I know you've endured a lot of grievances since childhood, but David is still your brother. You can't just ignore him.
Emily didn't respond, catching a glimpse of her stepmother standing nearby, watching coldly. Her stepmother, a strong-willed person, couldn't bring herself to ask Emily for money now that Emily had achieved success far surpassing her own son. Emily didn't expect her stepmother to still be so shameless after all these years.
Emily, we agreed last time that you'd give us 300,000 yuan to sever ties. You only gave us 200,000. That's not enough, you still owe us 100,000.
When we signed the severance agreement, it was written in black and white. Now you're asking for more money? Are you trying to extort me? I'll call the police.
Emily, remember what I taught you when you were young? Handle your own matters without troubling others. This is a family issue. Why involve outsiders?
Didn't we resolve this already? After giving you the money, no matter what happens, don't come to me. You agreed to that. What's this now?
Seeing them silent, Emily turned to leave.
He's your brother!
The voice instantly brought back many unpleasant memories for Emily. From childhood to adulthood, Emily was always intimidated by this phrase, obediently handing over everything she had. Her mother's notebook, half of a leftover egg. Even more absurdly, she wasn't allowed to do her homework at home. She had to give it to her brother, watching him tear apart her dignity and trample it underfoot, feeling triumphant. It was as if he was saying, "See, no one loves you, no one stands up for you." So Emily didn't stop, hearing her father pushing her stepmother behind her.
Apologize to her. We agreed on this before coming. Go on, go on.
Emily, your brother owes some money outside. As his sister, can you help him? Please help him.
Seeing Emily's stern expression, her stepmother finally made up her mind, grabbing her hand and kneeling at her feet.
Please save your brother, Emily. He's your brother. You have so much money, give him 100,000. I'm begging you, Emily. He's your brother, he's your brother.
Do I have a brother? I don't know about that.
Slowly pulling her hand from her stepmother's grasp, Emily wiped her hands as if they were dirty, then smiled at her.
I remember you once told me this wasn't my home. So how do I suddenly have a brother now?
Her stepmother trembled all over, clinging to Emily's leg.
I'm begging you, Emily. I'm begging you. He's your father's only son. He can't be in trouble. I know you hate me. Save David first. Then I'll do anything for you. I'll be your servant, do whatever you want.
Emily shook her off in displeasure.
Don't touch me. Are you crazy? Dad, isn't this person strange? She didn't consider me human before, but now that she needs me, she says we're siblings. How can there be such people in the world, right, Dad?
Emily, are you trying to end our family line? How can you be so heartless?
Emily didn't want to respond but turned back, smiling slightly.
Just think of it as if you sold me 10 years ago. If I remember correctly, you agreed on a price of 50,000 yuan back then. Now I'm giving you 200,000, 4 times that amount. Don't be so greedy.
Her father stood there, stunned, unable to believe she knew such details. But no matter how much he thought, he would never know the reason. David couldn't repay the debt, so he had to use his legs as collateral. When I found out, I made a point to visit him in the hospital. My stepmother was in the hallway, covering her face and crying. I walked over and patted her shoulder.
What do you want? Don't harm my son.
I'm not here to do anything. David is my brother, after all. As his sister, I should come to see him when he's unwell.
I pulled out a wad of cash from my bag.
Here's 2,000 yuan. It should be enough for a good meal after his surgery.
Thank you.
She reached out to take the money, but I flicked it away from her.
Want it?
The money slapped her left cheek with a crisp sound, and I let go, letting the red bills scatter between us.
Thank you for the 200 you gave me to see a doctor. A small favor repaid with a big one.
With that, I turned and left. She called after me until her voice broke, but I didn't look back. In my previous life, before I passed away, I clung to John's hand and spoke to him for the first time.
How much did you pay to buy me?
50,000 yuan. Quite expensive.
After hearing his answer, I lay on the bed and laughed heartily, feeling a sense of release. The man became anxious and started rambling.
Stop thinking about your parents. They're doing well. After they got the money, they bought a house in the county and started a small business. Your brother is about to get married. Even if you go back, they might not recognize you. Just live a good life with me. I bought a house for you in the county too, okay?
I finally gave up struggling, feeling utterly hopeless, because I knew I could never live to seek revenge on them. But they used the money from selling me to live a good life. Could their conscience really be clear?
Now they have the nerve to call me heartless. The irony is, he sold me for 50,000 yuan, and now I make 200,000 a year. We could have lived in harmony.
I just don't understand. It's one thing for my stepmother to dislike me, but my biological father could watch me be pushed into the abyss without a second thought.
He didn't even bother to ask how I was doing at John's house. To find out the answer, I put my work aside and returned to the small village where I was born and raised. The house I used to live in was so dilapidated it didn't even have a front door anymore. But now they were so poor that even a thief would leave behind 2 bags of rice. I walked straight in. The yard was muddy, sticking to my new, beautiful shoes. It had just rained in the village, and the old house's walls were seeping water, showing patches of dampness on the gray-white walls. When my father saw it was me, he tried to smooth the already wrinkle-free sofa, avoiding my gaze. I didn't care and asked,
How's David doing lately?
Recovering well? Emily.
My father hesitated, seeing my somewhat mocking look, and eventually said nothing more.
How has he been treating you? Taking good care of you?
I went straight for his sore spot. My father lowered his head, saying nothing.
Having a son is great, isn't it, Dad? A son to take care of you in your old age. So, where's your son now?
My father remained silent, and I stopped provoking him. Without a word, I headed straight to the bedroom. There were 2 small beds. On one lay David, who had just had his leg amputated, and on the other lay my stepmother, paralyzed and unable to afford surgery. At that moment, I was dressed in clothes averaging 5,000 yuan, clean and neat, while my father was unkempt and haggard, and my stepmother was dirty and no longer had her former arrogance. What goes around comes around. She glared at me and then turned her face away, refusing to look at me. Well, after riding on my head for so many years, bending once for her son was her limit. I not only didn't give her. Emily stood at the doorway, David's desperate voice ringing in her ears.
Emily, please, save my mom. Save her.
David, have you lost your mind? I'm not a doctor. How can I save your mom?
You have money. You must still have money. Emily, this is our mom. You can't just watch her suffer.
David, tears and snot covering his face, reached out and grabbed Emily's clothes.
I'm begging you, Emily. Please save my mom.
He clung to her like a drowning man, but his reasons were weak. After much pleading, he only managed to say,
Before your college entrance exams, our mom gave you extra nutrition and chicken legs. She cared about you.
Emily found it absurd. After living together for so many years, this was the only good thing he could recall.
David, you're being unreasonable. I'm not discussing this further.
She forcefully pulled her clothes from his grip and turned to leave.
I've already begged you. What more do you want, Emily? My mom can't.
David, from childhood, I've begged many people. Did any of your family ever feel sorry for me? When I begged you not to burn my books, when I begged for food, when I begged not to be locked outside, when I begged not to be forced into marriage, did you let me go?
I didn't know before. When my mom gets better, we'll make it up to you, okay?
You're being unreasonable.
She left the bedroom. David, in his condition, couldn't chase after her. In the living room, her father sat on the sofa, looking aged and filled with guilt.
Emily, I'm sorry.
I'm tired of hearing that. Do you have anything else to say?
We never really wanted to sell you. We just wanted you to go on a blind date. You know your mom.
David's mom, not mine. My mom died a long time ago.
Yes, yes. Your stepmother just envied others. She saw the neighbor's daughter getting married and thought you should try it too. We didn't really want you to get married.
And then? What else do you want to say?
The creaky wooden door opened, and John walked in, the man who couldn't find a wife back then.
I'm sorry, Emily. I had no choice. Her treatment is very expensive. Don't blame me.
Her father retreated to the bedroom as he spoke.
Emily, your father sold you to me for $10,000. I worked on the construction site for months to earn that. Today, you'll be with me, and then you'll come home with me, live a good life, and give me a healthy child. How about that?
Emily looked at John without resisting. John was strong from working on the construction site. She couldn't possibly fight him off.
3,
What?
2.
He paused, thinking she was crazy.
1.
The wooden door was kicked open.
Freeze, police.
You little witch, you set me up.
John was pulled away by the police. Emily accused them.
My biological father was bribed by this man to let him into our home to harm me. Officer, I have the recording here.
She played the recording on her phone for the police.
Please cooperate and come with us for an investigation.
Emily's father, looking incredulous, forced a smile.
This must be a misunderstanding, officer. I just wanted them to go on a blind date. Yes, a blind date. How could I sell her? It's a misunderstanding, officer.
The officer looked at the 50-year-old John and then at Emily, not yet 30, and pulled him aside.
We received a report. Please cooperate with our investigation.
Since it was found that her father had indeed taken $10,000 from John, he was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Although John hadn't actually committed a crime against her, he was found to frequently solicit prostitutes and was also detained. When Emily visited her father in prison, his eyes were cold.
How could you be so sure I would harm you?
You never let me down.
Smart, just like my daughter.
I take after my mom. Don't flatter yourself.
Your mom was very smart. She was the first college student in the village. I pursued her because she was so smart.
Yes, so you had no feelings for her and, by extension, disliked me. My mom's body wasn't even cold before you remarried. Your wife wanted to live in the city, so you sold me. You're truly a despicable person.
He fell silent. Before she left, she added,
You think I'm like you, a despicable person, but I'm not. I really wanted to save your wife, but you wouldn't give up. You still wanted to sell me. Your disabled wife and son can fend for themselves. They have nothing to do with me.
In the half hour she spent talking to David in the bedroom, her father had found John from the neighboring village, made a deal, and taken the money. Before she left, her father said softly,
Today is your birthday, right, Emily? Happy birthday.
Emily walked out the door, took a deep breath of fresh air.